Dear representatives of the U.S. Consulate General in Istanbul, dear President and members of the Private Schools Association of Turkey, dear teachers, our distinguished speaker, you are all welcome, and we are honored to host TOZOK Academy Teachers Training as Eyüboğlu Educational Institutions. Dear guests, we commemorate the head teacher Gazi Mustafa Kemal Atatürk, his comrades in arms with whom he fought shoulder to shoulder, our teachers who all passed away, and all our martyrs with mercy. We invite you to a moment of silence in their memory and then sing our national anthem. Dear guests, before we start the Power of Games in Education seminar, I would like to invite Cenk Eyüboğlu, Chairperson and General Manager of Eyüboğlu Educational Institutions, and also a member of the TOZOK Board of Directors, to the stage to give a welcome speech. Mr. Eyüboğlu.
Thank you. Dear esteemed representatives of the U.S. Consulate, President and board members of the TOZOK, Ms. Arana Shapiro, and teachers, welcome. We are very pleased to host you at Eyüboğlu Schools tonight. We have a very special guest, Ms. Arana Shapiro, who will share her extensive knowledge and expertise in game-based learning. As educators, we all know that the needs of the 21st century children are changing, and it has become challenging for educators to engage children in static classrooms. It is more important than ever to boost the learners' motivation and engage them in their learning. Recent findings have shown that using game design is one of the best ways to increase students' motivation, and it gives students a new way to learn that makes every step of the lesson fun and exciting. I'm very excited and delighted to have Ms. Arana Shapiro as our guest speaker this evening, as I believe she will open up new horizons for all of us with her extensive knowledge. I also would like to thank the Public Diplomacy section of the U.S. Consulate for making this day happen. Please enjoy the day. Thank you. Welcome.
Okay, we thank Mr. Eyüboğlu for his speech. And before I leave the floor to Ms. Arana Shapiro, I would like to briefly share her resume with you. Arana is a parent, educator, and managing director and chief learning officer at Games for Change, where she oversees game-based learning programs and partnerships for schools, organizations, families, and supports a growing global community of educators using games in the classroom. As the former executive director of the Institute of Play, Arana was part of the founding team that designed and opened the first ever school with a game-like learning model, the New York City public school Gas to Learn. She's also a co-author of the Gas to Learn, Growing a School for Digital Kids. She has 20+ years of experience in education and nonprofit management as a teacher, educational technologist, curriculum developer, and organizational leader. She received an MA in Education from Pepperdine University and a Master's of Education in Leadership for Educational Change from Bank Street College. So, may we have you here. Thank you.
Okay, all right. Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm very happy to be here, and thank you all for coming. No, I heard that it's like the day before your last day of school, so I was a teacher for a long time. I know how stressful and crazy that is, so thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. Okay, today we're going to talk about how to leverage the power of play in the classroom. And in order to get started, or to get warmed up to get started, we're going to play a game. So I'm going to switch the slide, and I'm just going to ask you to raise your hand if you know the game, the picture of the game that's on the screen. Can you just raise your hand if you know it? All right. Okay, great. So this game is rock, paper, scissors. We are going to play a rock, paper, scissors tournament. So we're all going to play. And here's how it's going to work. Just to be sure that everyone, does this keep going in and out? Or can you hear me okay? Okay. Just to be sure that everyone knows how to play it, I'm going to ask you to just call out. So what beats rock? Paper. What beats paper? Great. And what beats scissors? Excellent. Okay. So here's how it's going to work. In a minute, when I say go, you're going to stand up, and you're going to play one round of rock, paper, scissors with someone next to you. So just once, just one round. If you lose, you're going to sit down. If you win, you're going to find someone else who's standing to play with. As you win, so if you win, as you win, you're going to start to move forward. So all of the winners of each round are going to be stepping forward, until finally we have two people, our finalists, standing in the front, and they'll play a final round, and we'll crown somebody the rock, paper, scissors winner. So, are you ready? Are there any questions? Does it make sense? Just give me a thumbs up if it makes sense. Okay, so when I say go, everybody's going to have to stand up, which I know is so hard after a day of work. I totally get it. I understand. All right, you ready? Go. Okay, if you lose, have a seat, and then find someone else to play with. Okay, if you're winning, start to move forward. Okay, if you're winning, start to move forward. We should be getting down to the final round pretty soon. Come on down. Somebody won. Did you win? Stand up. I saw that you won. Come forward, come forward, come forward. Wait, oh. Did you win? Okay, you guys play each other. have we got? Yeah, go ahead, play each other. Okay, we're getting there. Okay, who won here? Okay, both, what? This is our final round. We're gonna crown a champion. Go for it. Okay, we have a champion. You won, all right, okay. Okay, thank you for playing. Now I have a question. Okay, so you just played a game, and I want you to just think, we don't have to talk about it out loud, but I just want you to think about how play just transformed this space. Right, so you all came in, you're a little tired, it was quiet, you weren't sure if you should be like talking, smiling, you were listening. It got loud in here, it got energetic, and I bet you feel slightly more energized after playing, yes? Okay, so play is really powerful, and we know play is really powerful because when you have young children, you watch them play constantly, right? They play to make sense of the world, they play to learn things. It's the natural way of learning is to play. And then we go to school. And in the younger years, you still play a little bit, but as you get older, at least in the United States, I won't make any assumptions about Turkey, but in the United States, as kids get older, it's time to be serious. And you're not supposed to smile, and you're not supposed to have fun, and you're not supposed to play. But playing, as you all just saw as adults, can help make you more ready and open to learn, right? And so that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about all the ways that you can use play and games to transform your space to make learning happier, more engaging, and ultimately stick a little bit better. So, welcome. I'm going to start with a video. This is a video that I'm going to talk more about this project as we get on with the presentation. But does anyone recognize what game this video might be from, just by the way it looks? Minecraft. That's right. Okay. And this, to me, this is a really nice example of games that can be educational, engaging, and also try to help kids make sense of the world. So I'm going to talk a lot about those concepts, how games can be educational, engaging, and help kids make sense of the world. But before I talk about it, I'm going to just let you take a look at this example.
One of the best things about playing Minecraft is that you get to build a world just the way you think it should be. Building a better world is possible in real life too. Alfred Nobel made a fortune when he invented dynamite in 1867. He wanted to ensure his legacy was one of world peace. So he left most of his wealth to establish the Nobel Prize. Thankfully, you don't need to be rich to make a difference. Find out what it takes to become an active citizen. Follow the stories of 4 groundbreaking Nobel laureates as you help them craft peace. Meet Fridtjof Nansen. He needs your help distributing his special passports to refugees after the First World War. This is Wangari Maathai. She started the Green Belt movement in Kenya. 30 million trees aren't going to plant themselves. You'd best lend a hand. You might have heard about the incredibly brave Malala Yousafzai from Pakistan. Let's help her spread her message about educational equality for all. Who better to help us understand the power of peace and compassion than His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama, who resolves conflict without violence. Without further ado, Minecraft Education Edition and the Nobel Peace Center invite you to play Active Citizen, the Nobel Peace Center's first ever game-based learning experience. Download and play today. It'll be a blast.
Okay, so we're going to talk more about this, but it's just to sort of show the video to kind of whet your appetite a little bit. And I'm going to we'll come back to it. So this is me It's weird to be standing next to a big picture of myself, but I work at an organization called Games for Change. Games for Change is located in New York City. It's a nonprofit organization, and the mission of the organization is really just to help people understand how games can be used beyond just entertainment. So basically how they can be used for good in the world. I'm going to tell you a little bit about how I ended up at Games for Change, because as I continue to talk, I'm going to talk about projects that are part of Games for Change, but also projects that I did before I got to Games for Change. So, okay, so like I said, I started as a teacher. I started teaching in California at Oak Street Elementary School. I was a first grade teacher straight out of college, and I loved it. I loved teaching first graders. I left California and moved to New York City, where I taught second grade at the school at Columbia. The school at Columbia was a brand new school. This was a long time ago. It was in 2003. And they were very interested in educational technology. At the time, in 2003, there weren't laptops in every classroom in the US. We were just starting to get smart boards, like the interactive whiteboards. And they were doing really cool stuff. They brought one-to-one classroom, they one-to-one laptops, there were iPads, there were smart boards, there were video cameras, there were tons of stuff. And I became really interested in how technology could be integrated in purposeful and meaningful ways into the classroom. So I taught second grade there, and then I moved on to be an educational technologist there. Eventually, I left the school at Columbia, and I moved to the Ross School, where I worked across grade levels from kindergarten through 12th grade to help teachers learn how to use technology in the classroom. While I was teaching at the Ross School, I met someone who was starting a nonprofit organization called Institute of Play. And they had one project that they were working on, and that project was opening up a new New York City public school called Quest to Learn. So I worked with that group to open up Quest to Learn. Quest to Learn is still in New York City. It's a 6th through 12th grade public school, and it was the first school of its kind, and that focused solely on using games and game-like learning in the classroom. And when we started, it was 2007 or 8 or something like that, and you really couldn't say games you couldn't say games to a group of people who were thinking about education, because they immediately imagined kids staring at screens, playing games, not doing anything productive, right? And so we had to really think about how we were going to talk about this school. And the way that we talked about it was we really thought about using the very best things that games do. So when you play a game, any game, well, let me just start by saying, how many of you play games? How many of you play video games? How many of you have mobile phones? How many of you play games on your mobile phones? So most of you in here are gamers, whether you like it or not, right? And so when you play a game, there are several things that happen. One is that you are forced to sort of suspend disbelief, right? You have to buy in, you have to jump in, you have to step into whatever immersive space that game is asking you to step into, and you have to take on some kind of a role. And you have to learn things in order to level up in the game. What Quest to Learn tried to do was say, okay, we're going to turn the classrooms into a game. We're going to create an environment where kids are immersed in whatever they're learning. They take on some kind of a role, so they have to be somebody else. They have to understand the struggles or the challenges of whatever role they're taking on. And as they learn, they need to know stuff in order to progress through the curriculum. That's what Quest to Learn did, and I'm going to show you some examples as we continue on. After a while of working at Quest to Learn and Institute of Play, I moved on to Games for Change, where I do a lot of the same work, which is working with teachers and students to think about how we can reimagine learning using games. But Games for Change goes even further to think about how really everything can be reimagined by using games, not just learning. So, the vision of Games for Change, I'm going to just read this out. So, our vision is a world where games are widely understood to have a purpose beyond entertainment and are used to power new approaches to social impact and drive real-world change. It's a really big mission, right? Like, games are going to change the world. I know some of you are probably like, what? Come on. But there are a lot of different things that games can do and can do really well, and I'm going to go on to talk about a bunch of them. So first I'm going to talk about how Games for Change started. So Games for Change started as it was a group of 4 game designers, developers, who had this idea. They thought that games could be used to do good in the world. That was really the basis of the idea. And it started at the New York Academy of Sciences, which is a very beautiful building in New York City, but they were in the basement, and they had like a little convening. They brought people together to think about this question: how can we use games beyond entertainment? That was in 2004. And today, so it's 20 years later, and we are all over the world, right? We have a chapter in Latin America, a chapter in Europe, a chapter in Asia Pacific, a chapter in Africa, and we just last year held our first activation or event to kind of create a chapter in the Middle East. And so there are groups of people in each of these regions that are really thinking about how games can be used beyond entertainment in many different ways. And so there are 3 main things that Games for Change does, which I will talk about in a second, but first I'm going to talk about this. So why games, right? So, there are a lot of things that can change the world, right? So why games? Games, and I talked about this a little bit, but games are really unique in that they are active problem-solving spaces. So they're a piece of media, just like movies or television, but when you're watching a movie or you're watching television, you're sort of passive, right? You're consuming whatever is being presented to you. When you're playing a game, you're active. You actually have to solve problems. Some are like made up problems, some are real problems, but you're having to be a part of the solution, right? And so because of that, you're forced as a player to really understand the problem in a way that you just don't have to when you read about it or when you watch it. So we believe at Games for Change that games are a perfect vehicle for helping people develop the kind of empathy and understanding that they need to develop to really try to drive impact. Another reason why games is, and this is worldwide statistics. So the gaming industry is growing at a phenomenal pace. So another reason that we answer the question why games is that games are where the people are. Right? You all, whether you came in here thinking you were a gamer or not, I promise you that 99% of you are playing a game when you're sitting in traffic, well, hopefully not when you're sitting in traffic, but maybe when you're sitting on the bus or in the subway or wherever, or at the doctor's office waiting, right? You are playing games. You can see that the rise of sort of smartphones, but also the pandemic has accelerated the growth here. But games are where people are. Games are a growing industry and people are playing them. So why not try to leverage them for good? Another reason that we believe games are powerful is, again, they allow you to step into this space where you can take on, where you can have empathy, you can empathize and understand problems. The United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, how many of you are familiar with these? Okay, so these have been identified as goals for the world, right, in order to create a more sustainable world and environment. There are games, and we work with a lot of games that align really well with these and allow people to deeply understand the problems, step into spaces that are trying to solve these problems and come up with creative solutions. So there's the games that are allowing you to become more empathetic. There's the growing games industry, and there's the identification of a common set of goals that we're all trying to work towards that really answer the question for us of why games. So Games for Change, here are the three main things that we do. One of them is we have events and convening. So part of our mission, part of what we're trying to do is to bring people together, sort of like what we're doing now. It's either we're bringing people together that are already doing this work so they can share best practices, or we're bringing people together who have never done this work but are interested, and we try to teach them and help them understand about it. One of our main events and convenings is in New York City. It's coming up next month. We have an annual Games for Change festival. It's a conference, really, that brings people together to hear about work that's happening around the world. I'm going to show you just quickly a little video of what we're doing in next month in New York City, if any of you are up for a vacation over your summer, but just so you get a sense of it. So you can watch this. It's very short.
Games for Change is the largest global community for people who want to use games and immersive media to make the world a better place. Every year, our growing community comes together in July for our flagship event, the Games for Change Festival, held in New York City. In 2023, we'll host the 20th annual Games for Change Festival. And to celebrate, we're expanding the program with an entire week of events from July 17th to the 21st. The whole week is jam-packed with opportunities to learn, share, and connect, with a cutting-edge lineup of talks, workshops, opportunities to get to know funders, and experience award-winning interactive content at the Games in XR Immersive Arcade. This year's program also features the first of its kind Games and Sustainable Development Goals Summit held at the United Nations, as well as the Next Gen Summit designed for youth ages 13 to 17. We hope you'll join us in July for this historic moment to celebrate the growth of the global Games for Change community, reflect on 20 years of trailblazing innovation, and come together around a vision for the future of games, XR, and impact.
Okay, so that's one thing that we do, bringing people together. The second main area of work is what we call executive production and consulting. So what that means, we don't make games at Games for Change. We look to other people's games and kind of elevate them and try to bring people together. But once in a while, we do executive production. We did executive production for that Minecraft game that I showed you. And I'm going to show you an example of another executive production project that we did that focuses, it's a VR project. So I don't know if the news of this event got to Turkey, but in 2018, you can let me know if you heard about it, there was a false alarm, a nuclear false alarm in Hawaii. Did you guys hear about that at all? No, okay. So in Hawaii, I guess there are people who are monitoring the skies to make sure everything's safe. And by accident, somebody pressed a button that automatically sends a warning out to the entire population of Hawaii that a nuclear attack was imminent and everybody needed to take cover. It was a mistake. They sent it out, and for 38 minutes, people thought that there was a nuclear attack coming to Hawaii. We worked with a production company to executive produce a VR project that puts you into the experience of that attack, and or that non-attack, those 38 minutes of thinking there might be an attack, and teaches about nuclear proliferation and disarmament. I'm going to show you the trailer for that. It's an example of our executive production work.
On the morning you wake to the end of the world, Take your body back to the kai, to the place our kupuna taught us life began. First pole, then coral, then slime, then a whole universe fitting into a space smaller than a grain of sand.
911, please, fire ambulance. I just got an alert on my phone saying there was a ballistic missile inbound. Yeah, we just got it too. As much as you know, that's how much we know.
Pacific Command has detected a missile threat to Hawaii. A missile may impact on land or sea within minutes. This is not a drill. If you are indoors, stay indoors. If you are outdoors, seek immediate shelter in a building. Remain indoors well away from windows.
On the morning we wake to the end of the world, your vision will be 2020. So use it. And maybe, just maybe, the world may not have to end again tomorrow.
So it's a very heavy topic, but it is in VR, so you can imagine that's the trailer for it, the preview for it, but when you're in the VR headset, you know, the text comes to your hand, it looks like you're picking up a phone, you're immersed in this space where people around you are panicked and scared, and it really does kind of bring up a very visceral reaction where you start to feel kind of nervous. That's a really good example of a kind of game or immersive media that has impact, that helps people raise awareness and help people understand a social issue. So that's a example of our executive production. And then there's the third example of the work that we do, and this is really what you're all here to learn about. Games for Change Learn, right? G4C Learn is the third way that we kind of help to bring games into the world, and it's through education. So we work with teachers and students, K through 12, to help them understand how they can bring games and game design into classrooms to help engage students and elevate learning. So I'm going to talk about all the ways that we do that. Okay, so I don't know what your classrooms look like. They maybe don't look like this, but I have taught classrooms that look like this. The mission of Games for Change Learn is to take this and turn it into that. Those two pictures perfectly describe what we're trying to do, right? We're trying to create engaged and active learners whatever way we can. And one of the things, when I showed you those graphs of the gaming industry, the same is true for youth, right? Kids are playing games, whether we think they're good or we think they're bad, whether we want them to be playing them or not, they are. And so meeting them where they are is very, very powerful. G4C Learn, all of our programs align to these 6 pillars. So anything we do, we believe, even this talk, right? We believe that these pillars should be the foundation. The first is the power of play, right? That play, as I showed you with rock, paper, scissors, hopefully, can be very powerful. It can change a space. We also believe in the power of design, so that taking kids and learners through the design cycle helps them to develop all sorts of soft skills that they don't develop if they're not part of a process. We believe in the power of choice, right? So giving kids, learners of any age, the ability to choose, not everything, right? Choice with constraints, but giving them choice. We believe in the power of resilience. So along with design, resilience and design are often very connected, right? As you design something, sometimes it goes well, sometimes it doesn't go well. You develop resilience. We believe in the power of community. So community and collaboration, and we believe in the power to drive real-world change. We have 2 main programs. The first, 2 kind of flagship programs. The first is educator-focused, and it's called Game Plan. It started as a program for museum educators and has evolved to be a program for educators of all types, right? So museum, school, after school, all types of educators. And you can see that was obviously during COVID, because it was a virtual program. But what we do in that program is we work with educators over the course of 10 sessions to help them learn about all the ways they can use games in the classroom. We teach them game design, and we help them design a game that they can use in their classroom that's aligned with something they're trying to teach, some learning goal of some sort. And then our flagship program for students is called the Games for Change Student Challenge. This is a game design program for kids, so they learn how to design games. First, they start with non-digital games, and then they move to digital games. They design games around some kind of a theme, and that theme, again, is aligned with the Sustainable Development Goals. So we provide a yearly theme. Kids design games that either teach about the theme or raise awareness about the theme or try to solve a problem based on the theme. And they submit the games into our challenge, and it results in a big competition with awards and a lot of fanfare. And it's really exciting. Those are our two main programs. All of them, again, those 6 pillars are at play. And the game, what I'm going to do for the rest of this talk is give you a little kind of sneak peek into the educator program. Maybe, if I can move the slide. Okay, oh, and this is our impact. It's like, we've worked with about 43,000 students. They have created around 5,000 games. We've held about 71 student game jams, and we've trained, now it's closer to 800 teachers. Okay, so there are 4 main ways that you can use games in the classroom. And I'm going to go through each one, and I'm going to show you examples, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the pros and cons of each, why you might want to use one or the other. The first is a learning game. So learning games are, sometimes they're digital, sometimes they're non-digital. Learning games can easily be brought into the classroom. You guys are all teachers. How many of you have played a game with your students in the classroom? Any game, right, okay. Lots of you. Learning games, they're a discrete game, one game. They focus on a learning goal. They're great because it's easy for students to buy in because they like playing games, right? So it's easy buy-in. They do foster very deep understanding in whatever the game is trying to teach, right? So if it's a game about fractions, your kids are probably going to learn fractions pretty deeply. And you can, because of the way games are designed, assessment, understanding who knows what, is usually built right into the game. So those are all really good reasons to use a learning game in the classroom. Some of the things to think about, they're not reasons not to use them, but some of the things to think about, the cons, are that they can be inflexible. So they've been designed by somebody else. If they're teaching fractions, but you want to teach, say they're teaching adding fractions, but you want to teach multiplying fractions, it's not going to do that, right? It's a standalone game. So they're inflexible and they cover a limited amount of learning goals. But if you have one specific thing you're trying to teach, or you want your students to kind of buy in right away, they're a really, really good way to do that. We talked about this active citizen. This is a learning game. It's great. The objectives of this learning game are to help kids understand that that small choices can make a really big impact. That's the learning goal. It does a great job of reaching that learning goal by allowing kids to step into the shoes of all of these Nobel laureates and try to make choices. They make the kinds of choices they needed to make and make the kind of change that they needed to make. One thing that's really important to think about when you're thinking about using games in the classroom is that the learning needs to extend beyond the moment of gameplay. So I'm sure that some of you, a lot of you, have used a movie or a book or a clip of something in the classroom, yes? Yeah? Okay, so if you showed a movie to your kids in the classroom, you probably would not tell them, like you'd watch the movie and then be like, okay, we're all done here. You would talk about it, you would lead discussions, there may be more work they do. Games are the same. If you're going to play a game in the classroom, it's really important that you make sure that you help the kids make sense of whatever it is they're learning. For Active Citizen, we create Games for Change developed a series of lessons that were designed to accompany the gameplay. So you can, and these are available, they're free, and the game is free for anyone who's interested, but there are lessons that help you make sense that help you understand what each of these laureates did, and then you play the game, and then there are lessons that help you make sense of the gameplay. As you think about moving games into the classroom, it's really important to think about how you're going to help kids move into the game, and then how you're going to help kids move out of the game. The next way that you can bring games into the classroom is by creating a game-like activity. So this is what Quest to Learn, the school that I started in New York City, really tried to do. What you're trying to do here is to take the things that games do really, really well. Again, this immersive space, you take on a role, you have to make choices, you have to learn things in order to move forward, and you embed them into the curriculum. This is great if you're trying to cover a lot of learning goals, but it requires a ton of teacher participation and planning. So that you have to kind of like weigh whether or not that's worth it. But it's really good to use if a game is too specific, right? If it's like, I don't want to teach just adding fractions, I want to do more than that, then you can think about how to make something game-like, or you want to increase engagement across your curriculum. I'm going to show you an example of a game-like curriculum now. It's a video from Quest to Learn, and I want to just set it up before I show it because it can be a little confusing. So what you're going to see is you're going to see a 6th grade science class. So they're about 12 years old, and they're learning about the body, the human body. And that is required curriculum in New York City. In 6th grade, all across the city, kids have to learn about the human body. And so that's the learning goal of this game-like curriculum. But what you're going to see is this teacher has designed her classroom with a game-like story. So she'll explain it, but I'm just going to give it a little bit of context. Basically, she's created a story for her students where they've gotten a letter from a doctor asking for their help. This doctor, this poor doctor, has shrunken himself, and accidentally he was inhaled into the body of a patient, and he doesn't know where he is. He's like totally confused, doesn't know where he is. And so he is sending letters to the students that are just describing, right? They're just saying like, I'm in this place with these red flowing trees, right? And where am I, and can you help me get out of the body? And the students have to kind of use the clues to uncover that he's in the circulatory system or he's in the digestive system. So we're going to watch a video of the kids in this class, and then I'll fill in any of the blanks afterwards.
How do we know there are tiny things in a drop of pond water? We can use a microscope to view the pond water.
Imagine you could shrink yourself and walk into a tiny cell. Well, what is it like inside a cell? Is it a fantastic? It's a fantastic journey. Fascinating.
It feels like you're playing when you're actually learning.
Like sometimes you could like play a game and not even know that you're learning.
You're actually having fun and you realize it, and then you realize that you're learning while you're doing it.
I have to ask that question, what hat are the kids going to wear in this mission that they're going to be on? And that's part of the curriculum design process. I think most teachers do curriculum design with, okay, what do they need to learn? But at Quest, it's what do they need to learn? How are we going to engage them? And what role are the kids going to be stepping into? And what story are the kids going to be stepping into? So it's all a part of creating this narrative.
http://
That's the exact thing you put in front of the website. Yeah,
Are you sure that's what you see?
Yeah, HTTP. That's 10 sides.
Weird. I totally thought your specimen number was going to be a plant cell. Wow.
That is ODO. It says ODO.
The light switch is red.
DE. That second letter is an E.
What? E?
Greetings, TWTW students. I'm Dr. Smalls. I work for Shrinkley Labs. I am honored to say You are invited to compete in the 2013 Shrinkley Labs Cell City Design Competition.
The Need to Know is created by this cast of characters. There's a teeny little doctor named Dr. Smalls, and he has shrunken himself and put himself inside of the body of one of his patients because he was trying to find out what this mystery disease was. And in shrinking himself, he lost all of his medical vocabulary, and he sends my students a communique. So the need to know is help get me out of this body I'm trapped and help cure my patient. So it's actually completely ridiculous. And the kids know it's a game, but it's so fun for them to become a part of this narrative that they do get right in. And they do get involved and start figuring out the clues of, well, where is Dr. Smalls now? Well, we know he's in this hollow space, and they start learning about the body from basically these clues of his location in the body. So they know that it's all made up, and they know it's all just play, but it's fun for them. It's much more fun than just, PowerPoint after PowerPoint, and now we're gonna learn about the respiratory system, boys and girls.
I think we play games at Quest to Learn because it helps us incorporate learning into having fun.
You could learn from a game and be like, oh, that was so fun. And then read a book and be like, oh, that was fun.
It leads some kids to get sidetracked. Well, this isn't real, or what? I don't care about Dr. Smalls, but for 99% of the kids, it's they're totally in.
So that's an example of game-like learning. One of the things that Leah, the teacher in that video, says that I think is really important is that it's ridiculous, right? I mean, it's ridiculous that a doctor got shrunken and sucked and inhaled into a body, and the kids know it's ridiculous. And at the beginning, you see some kids that are like, oh, it's ridiculous, this is so dumb. But as they move through it, they get completely enmeshed in this challenge, and they want to solve it, and they trust the game to move them through a process where they're going to learn everything they need to learn so that they can solve this big challenge of getting the doctor out of the body. And that's a really good example of how to make something game-like. So it doesn't necessarily mean they're playing any games. They're more a part of this kind of big game. And then the third way to bring games into your classroom is by gamification. And this is a very popular term, right? I'm sure you've heard of gamification. So gamification is great because it's broadly applicable. I could turn this talk I could gamify this talk right now. I could say that anytime you raise your hand to ask a question when we do the Q&A, you're gonna get a point, and the person with the most points at the end is gonna get a prize when we walk out. And I've just gamified this talk, right? It's great. It would motivate you maybe to think of some questions and ask me some questions. It can be applied to anything, and it's very easy to measure. I would know exactly who was listening and asking me questions just because you raised your hand to get a point. One of the problems is it can backfire by reducing intrinsic motivation, right? So I won't know whether or not you actually cared about what I was talking about or you just wanted that prize as you were walking out the door, right? I have no idea. And maybe it doesn't matter, but it's not that you're motivated because you really want to learn about games. It's because you're motivated because you want to know what that cool prize might be, right? So gamification it's a great way to kind of help students discover the value in something. So I could use it because I want you to pay attention. I want you to have a really good question at the end. And I hope that because you paid attention, I tricked you a little bit into learning more about what I had to say, right? So it's great if you want them to discover the value in something that they may not be interested in or they may have some preconceived notions about. This is a platform called Classcraft. Has anyone seen this before? You have, okay. I didn't know if it was in Turkey or not, but it's a good example of gamification, I think, personally. It's a platform where you can enroll your whole class, and the kids throughout the entire year of school are sort of playing this game in the background where they're earning points for being good to each other, for being kind. Nice, right? It hums in the background of your classroom, and at the end of the year, or whenever you want really, you can kind of see who's got the most points, who's got the power-ups, who's got all that stuff. So it's great. It's a good example. Okay, And then the final way that you can bring games into your classroom is by teaching game design. So game design is very engaging for kids. I know you're probably shocked to hear that, right? But kids love games. And a game design curriculum can be really engaging and exciting for them. It can be applied to any subject, right? So it doesn't matter whether you're teaching math, science, history, English, it doesn't matter. What it does is it does integrate STEAM. So do you guys use STEAM, the term STEAM? Okay, so STEAM or digital creation into whatever you're already teaching. So it's great. They can design games to a theme, which I talked about with the student challenge, right? The theme-based games. But they also can design a game to demonstrate understanding. So I'm sure that many of you, if you teach older kids, have your kids write a paper or design a PowerPoint presentation to show what they've learned. Games can do the same thing. You can tell your kids, design a game that shows me what you've learned about whatever, and they can do the exact same thing, and they get a little bit more excited about it. So that's a nice way to kind of dip your toes into using games, is to let kids, you don't even have to really teach the game design, but to let kids design a game to show you what they've learned. And the other thing that's great about it is that generally it's collaborative. So you're asking kids to work together, which means that they're creating some global competencies that are being more and more valued in the world, like communication, collaboration, problem solving, systems thinking. So all of those kinds of things can be kind of can be brought into your curriculum by teaching or using game design. Okay, so those are the 4 different ways that you can use games in the classroom. I'm almost done, so I'm going to leave you with a few secrets to effective game-based learning. And then I'm going to open it up for questions. So one is, not all games are great games, right? So some games are not good. And so as the teacher, one of your responsibilities is to evaluate the games before you bring them into the classroom, which means you have to play them. And you can play them by yourself, or one of the things that we used to do at Quest to learn all the time is to get a small group of kids together to be play testers and let them evaluate the games. Bring them in, play the game with them, ask them if they think it's good, is it fun, what did they learn, so you can see whether or not it's going to engage and teach the way you want it to. The second way is to build practices and structures around gameplay. So bringing games into the classroom is the same as bringing anything else into the classroom. It's really important that you treat it as if you were bringing a movie in, a book in, anything, any new experience in. So what is it? What do you want it to look like? How should kids behave? All those things that I'm sure you do a great job of as a needs to be done with games, right? Same as you would. Bringing games into the classroom doesn't have to mean video games. It can mean video games, but it doesn't have to mean video games. The rock, paper, scissors, right? Very low tech, just your hands. You can blend digital and non-digital to create really rich learning environments for kids where they are engaged and excited. And you would be surprised that the non-digital sometimes engages just as much as the digital when it comes to games. We talked a little bit about this next one, thinking about the game as more than just that moment of play. So really thinking about how you can extend the learning of the game. Maybe it's discussions, maybe it's projects, maybe it's creating a game based on the game they did. Whatever it is, really thinking about how you can take that moment at Institute of Play, which started Quest to Learn. We used to talk about it as exploding the game. So how can you explode the game out to make it more than just that moment of gameplay? And then the final one is to find collaborators to help you design, evaluate, and test tools. I showed you the slide with all of the countries and the continents that were doing this work. There are people that are really into and thinking hard about the ways that you can use games for learning. And you can find people. There are conferences, there are online chat groups, there's Games for Change, which the whole mission is to connect people, right? So really finding the people that can help you think about how to do this, to evaluate, to look at things that they've been using, and to test those tools. Okay. So I'm gonna open it up for any questions you might have. Okay. Any questions? Awesome. Yeah.
Thank you for the presentation. At some point in your presentation, you said that in New York City, there is a K-12 institution, and it is designed totally, to use gaming. Now, there are several questions. One is, what about the New York Department of Education? That department has some rules, some criteria, serious criteria.
Yeah.
Does the department recognize that school?
Mm-hmm. Do you want to, should I answer now, or do you have more questions?
Yeah, okay, I have a second question.
Okay. Yeah, it's a New York City public school, so it's part of the Department of Education. So I'll tell you. So
is it public school, charter school, private school?
Public school.
Okay.
Public school. So it's completely recognized by the Department of Ed. This is a great question. I'm glad you asked it. It's completely recognized by the Department of Education. So you know the video that I showed of the kids with the shrunken doctor? So the New York City Department of Education requires that 6th grade students learn about the body. The school teaches all the same things that the New York City Department of Education requires. The kids take the same end-of-year tests that all the other kids in the Department of Education take. They just learn the content in a different way, right? So and they do very well on the tests.
But there is more. There is a regents exam.
Yep.
To be a high school graduate, they have to take a exam, a top test.
Yeah.
Now, what do they? Can they do it? Are they successful?
Yeah. So they're learning all the same content, and in some ways, because they're having to do something with it rather than just kind of read about it, they learn it in a different way and are can learn it a little bit deeper. We had a researcher from New York University that did research on the school that showed that the kids made statistically significant gains in all academic subjects because of the immersive environment of the curriculum. So because they had to really, when you think about when you learn something in school versus when you actually have to do it on the job, it's a very different experience, right? And so because they were actually forced to do things with the material that they were learning, they do learn it, and in some ways they're learning it deeper and doing very well on the tests.
There is also university part. Now, admission office in universities, they look at everything in detail. I assume some problems are emerging there.
No, because they're still having the same documents. They still have the report cards and the test scores and all of that show this. So basically, they're not seeing the university is not seeing what the curriculum is that's happening in the school. They're only seeing what the kids are presenting.
One more question.
Yeah.
What about university classes? We are not using it.
No.
We don't have gaming in classes. We just do it as we know it. And your kids may have trouble in university.
Yeah, so this is middle school. This is young, right? 6th grade that you saw. As the grades progress into the high school, what you see are kids that are they're not having these kind of fantastical stories. They're doing projects around climate change, right? They're government officials and they have to figure out how to fix climate change. So they're doing projects like that. So the projects, the kind of missions, as they're called at Quest to Learn, get more and more sophisticated to where they're really trying to solve real world problems. And they're still in this immersive space where they're taking on a role, but they're not dealing with shrunken doctors or little creatures. They're dealing with real world problems that they then go to college, and yes, they may be a little bored, right? Because they're used to this kind of project-based being a part of the kind of solution to things, but they are able to problem solve in ways that kids that don't have this experience are not able to do.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I don't have another question.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Arana. Are there any other schools like this in United States that you are, I think you are supporting those schools, right? In terms of curriculum?
No, yeah, so I mentioned Institute of Play and Quest to Learn. Institute of Play it's not around anymore, but was a nonprofit organization that supported the school with curriculum development. In the later years of the school, Institute of Play started to just work with teachers to help them do the kinds of things that Quest to Learn is doing. I don't think there are any other schools. I don't know of any other schools. There were a couple that were trying to kind of be created during the time of Quest to Learn, but I don't think they're still around. So there's not a school necessarily that's doing it, but we have trained and continue to train teachers around the world to do this work in their own classrooms. It'd be awesome if there was another school, but they're kind of just doing this work classroom by classroom now.
How about other schools? I mean, public schools or private schools? What do they do if they need more games in their schools?
So,
other than just taking teacher trainings?
Yeah. So there's so many resources available online. Games for Change has tons of them where you can, and groups that are really thinking about this. So, you know, if you start to go down that path of research, you'll find so many resources. And yeah, and you kind of like find them and then like reach out to people and get connected to a network. Come to our festival in New York in the summer that has a whole day that's focused on teachers and stuff. Like all that stuff exists. Go visit Quest to Learn. They're doing it still.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? There were a couple in the front here.
Hello, my name is Helime. I have been working for 4 years as a professional English teacher. First of all, I want to ask you for your public school. I mean, when I compare to USA, how many students are there in your, for example, a public class?
A lot there. So there are about.
For example, in Turkey, the system is different. That's why I want to ask you.
Yeah. There are about 35 kids in each class. Is that I think big or small compared to Turkey classrooms?
Yes, but for public school, yes, it's good. But for private school, yes, good. But for the public school, actually, the system is different. That's why I want to ask you. And also, you told me that there are so many there are so many games to play. But is there any website to play to access them?
Yeah. So.
In order to apply it.
No, I understand. Yeah. So there, for a long time, people have been working on like a centralized website that has games aligned with learning standards. There is not one good place that I can send you to, but there are a lot of little places that are doing it, right? So like if you search up math games, you'll find games, that are. But nobody has really kind of like figured out how to bring it all into one place. Part of the reason is I think there are just so many games, and games continue to be developed. And some, so no, sorry.
If it's possible, I want this one.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, no problem. Thank you.
Questions? She's just right in front, here.
Okay, hello again. So I have 2 questions.
Okay.
One of them, what are some of the main ideas for when you're supporting teachers to implement this, especially designing course in designing game in their classes? What are some of the main ideas that you teach teachers?
That's a great question. So one of the biggest ideas is that, especially for game design, when you're teaching kids to design games, is that the kids are going to know more than you are as the teacher, and that is just a fact. There's no way around that. They are playing games constantly. If I had asked them the question of who plays a game, every single hand would have shot up. You guys were kind of like, oh, a little, I don't know. Every hand would have gone up. They understand games and the way games work and what makes a game fun deeply and better than anybody in this room, myself included, are going to understand it. So one of the things you have to be okay with is the student knowing more than the teacher. It's very hard for a teacher. It's a very hard place to be for a teacher. If you can do it, if you can kind of like say like, okay, let's learn this together, it's very powerful. Kids love that, right? So that's one of the biggest things, is like kind of letting go of being the expert in everything. Another thing is that we talk a lot at Games for Change in our learning programs about reframing failure. So games are really great for learning because failure is built into the game. Like, it's actually how you learn. Like, every time you play a game, you fail eventually, and then you pick it up and try again, right? Like, it's just part of the gameplay. That doesn't happen necessarily in a classroom as much as one would hope it would, right? And so one of the things that we talk about a lot is like, how can you help kids reframe their failure and use it to make something better next time? So that's another really big idea that comes from that. And then, the other thing is that one of the things to think about when you're helping kids think about designing games is that thinking about what the challenge feels like is really important. And I usually have kids think about when they feel the most motivated to learn something. You probably, because you're a room full of educators, you won't be surprised to hear that kids like it when things are a little bit hard. Like, they don't want things to be really easy all the time. That's not fun or interesting. So when they're designing games, that's the same, right? You want to find the kind of sweet spot of challenge and help kids understand that a little bit of challenge is really good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Actually, I would love to see some examples, especially some younger kids developing games. But I guess maybe, are there any sites that you can?
Well, we're gonna share this slide deck. You guys you have access to this slide deck. Mm-hmm. If you Google Institute of Play, it'll take you to the website, and there are tons of examples.
That's great. Thank you.
Hello. Thank you for your contribution and very nice presentation. I'd like to ask about maybe on top of a brief comment. When we think of Turkey, and there's a rapid change in the urbanization and urban culture, and that's really affecting children. Because we were used to play outside our homes. Yeah. But now, even though they are immensely playing digital games, they are having difficulties to set up non-digital games. For instance, I have a child, I have a daughter of 8 years old. When they come together, 3 or 4 of them come together, they have difficulties or challenges setting up games, non-digital games, because they're used to play Minecraft or other video games. So do you see these improvements or these changes as challenges as teachers or educators in the classroom? Because it's difficult. I mean, when you emphasize the importance of games, I also agree with you, but as I see, there is a pre-construction needed before you explain the game. I mean, you have to pre-construct it as a teacher so that the kids will play a game. Is there a way to break this challenge? Thank you.
Yeah, that's a great, you guys have some really, really good questions. So I totally understand where you're coming from. I have an 8-year-old also who is exactly the same. If it's not a digital game, he's sort of like, I'm bored, I don't know what to do, I can't figure out how to play, I don't, and I don't know if I have a great answer for that problem, but what I will say is that one of the things that I think is really important when you're thinking about games in learning settings is that I did not want to come here. I hope that I didn't give you the impression that all I think is good is digital games, right? So I think that non-digital games are really powerful and to have a really, really significant place in and out of the classroom. And sometimes, especially with game design, designing a non-digital game is infinitely more easier, right? Like it's so much easier. And when we start teaching game design at Games for Change, we always start with non-digital games and just kind of playing, like the same way you played rock, paper, scissors. I think the more kids are exposed, so I personally think the more kids are exposed to games of all kinds, the better they become at playing games of all kinds. You know, sometimes when we start teaching game design, we teach them the parts of a game and how to design a game, and then we just give kids a box of materials and say, use this to design a game. I think there's a lot of power in that kind of exploration and giving kids the opportunity in a structured way to explore stuff in a free way could maybe help with that when they move into this unstructured free space where they need to kind of figure out how to do it. I don't know if that exactly answers your question, but I think, you know, like structuring exploration and providing constraints around exploration gives rise to some really creative thinking and that they can then do.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Any other questions?
Hi, thank you for the presentation. Millions of teachers are teaching the same subject, same curriculum all around the world, whether it's in Chinese, English, French, whatever. And there are millions of students and millions of teachers. Is there any game, or has anyone come up with a game that's connected to real life? Like, let me go deeper in that, saying that you see those kids, they're like mining bitcoins, right?
Yeah.
So it gives them something in real life that they can use. But you see like French children, Turkish, American, they're learning the anatomy, the body. Has anyone come up with a game that's like, that they're learning and they're playing at the same time with their counterparts, but in a mess, like a Facebook kind of stuff?
No, I mean, there are games, there are like platforms that allow you to kind of design, kids to design games and share their games with each other, like Minecraft, like, does Roblox, do you guys have Roblox here? Roblox, those kinds of things. You know, there's, Roblox, to me, there's like a little bit of quality control issues, like you don't kind of know what's going on there. If you're looking for that kind of stuff, I really would look towards the sandbox games like Minecraft, where kids can design, because it sort of doesn't require any content, but it can be used with any content, right? So like you can kind of direct, like we used to have kids at Quest to Learn use Minecraft. They were learning about slope, and they would design roller coasters and then calculate the slope and then share those with other kids. So like things like that, like looking towards the more sandbox games where they're open and kids can figure out how to kind of make sense of what, you know, it's almost like being in a sandbox, right? You can play, but in this digital space where you can connect with other kids and play online. That's the way to do it. You have a question? You have a question, right?
Okay, first of all, I'm asking this question as a mother.
Okay.
Are there any neuroscientific experiments that measure the kids' brains' waves when they're learning through these games?
That's a great question. I don't know of any off the top of my head, but I'm happy to like do a little digging and see. You know, the only thing that comes close to that is a while back, in like, I don't know, like 2014 or something, there was a lab started called Glass Lab in, it was, EA, do you guys know the company EA Entertainment? Okay, so EA, it was like a spin-off of EA, it was called Glass Lab, and they did a project where they worked with the game SimCity. You know the game SimCity? And they, on the back end, like so behind the game, they built programs where they could measure kids' systems thinking skills by the choices they made in SimCity, where they found significant gains in like your ability to think systemically. But I don't know about brain, like I don't know if they're like the brainwaves question.
I would assume from I would like to actually learn from a teacher's point of view. I think that's the answer. That could be an answer to that.
Absolutely.
What do teachers think? Like, how do kids learn better? Is there some type of like studies that have done that?
Yeah, I mean, there's been plenty of studies that have been done around using games and game design and game-like learning in the classroom, but I don't think they've ever like actually hooked kids up and measured brain waves, right? But like there's been plenty of studies that have been done where kids are learning something in a more traditional way and then learning something in a game-like way. And I think the bottom line is that the engagement is deeper in a game-like way. And so because the engagement is deeper, kids tend to learn it in a deeper way, right? You know, and I don't want you to leave here thinking like, oh, that person from New York told me that kids should never read books or do, you know, writing projects like that. I don't believe that at all. I think that there's ways to move to kind of integrate all of this together to make a really kind of beautiful ecosystem for kids so that they're engaged and learning, but they're also doing the kinds of things that are going to help them move it successfully into a college setting, right? So that they're doing all of these things at the same time and learning things really deeply.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you so much, everybody.
Okay, we thank Ms. Shapiro for this great presentation and keep her on stage. And I invite Mr. Eyüboğlu to give her plaque. Thank you, plaque. So, dear guests, we thank you for your participation and I hope you had a great day and training. Before moving on to the closing speech, I would like to share some information with you. We kindly ask you to fill out the evaluation form which is on TOZOK's website and certificates will be sent to you via email. And now I invite Mr. Zafer Öztürk for his closing speech.
Finally, thank you for your presentation. And that distinguished official of the U.S. Consulate General in Istanbul, our esteemed speaker and esteemed teachers. We are gathered today to address the issue of increasing the power of play in education. Although traditional education methods are effective, it is a fact that games play an important role in education. Games make the learning process more fun, interactive, and motivating. They also improve students' creativity, problem-solving skills, and the collaboration abilities. In this sense, I would like to thank Ms. Arana Shapiro for sharing her valuable views with us today. I would also like to thank Onur Dizdar from the U.S. Consulate General in Istanbul, who made it possible for Ms. Shapiro to be with us today. I would also like to thank the academic advisor of our association, Didem Thailand, for her support especially. Thank you very much. Within the scope of the teacher training organized by our association throughout the year, the founder of our valuable institution, Eyüboğlu Educational Institutions, hosted the last event of this academic year. I would also like to thank the honorary president of our association, Dr. Rüstem Eyüboğlu, and the founding representative and the board member of our association, Cenk Eyüboğlu, and his employees for their hospitality. And I would like to thank you, my dear teacher friends, for being here today to contribute to your professional development on the last day of our year. I wish you all a nice summer holiday. Hope to see you in our new activities at the beginning of the new academic year. with my best regards. Thank you very much.
Please stay on the stage to give the thank you plaques. First, I invite Mr. Onur Dizdar from U.S. Consulate General in Istanbul to get his thank you plaque. Now I invite Mr. Cenk Eyüboğlu to get his thank you plate.
This is your second or third plate, which one?
So thank you everyone for participation. See you later. Bye-bye.